The Force binds all things across the galaxy, connecting every living being in an invisible web of light and dark, life and death, past and future. For 1,000 generations, the Jedi Order served as guardians of this ancient power, maintaining peace and justice throughout the Republic. But what happens when the greatest threat to their existence fails at the moment of its execution? What happens when the carefully orchestrated genocide designed to eliminate the Jedi in a single coordinated strike simply doesn't work? On Utapau, Obi-Wan Kenobi stood atop Boga, his Varactyl mount, surveying the sinkhole city where General Grievous had met his end. The war was finally over. He could feel it. The darkness that had clouded the Force for years was still present, but something had shifted. Commander Cody approached behind him. His DC-15 blaster rifle held at an odd angle. Obi-Wan turned, sensing confusion and pain radiating from the clone commander. "General," Cody said, his voice strained. I almost..." The rifle trembled in his hands. "Something tried to make me shoot you." Across the galaxy on Kashyyyk, Yoda's ears twitched as he sensed a disturbance rippling through the Force like a dark wave trying to crash against the shore, only to dissipate before landfall. Beside him, Commander Gree raised his blaster toward the Jedi Master's back, finger hovering over the trigger. The clone's head jerked violently as if two minds warred within a single body. The blaster lowered. Gree stumbled backward, gasping, "Sir, something's wrong with my head." On Maigito, Ki-Adi-Mundi ignited his lightsaber as the clones around him suddenly aimed their weapons in his direction, but their movements were sluggish, uncertain. Several clones dropped their rifles entirely, clutching their helmets. "It burns!" one screamed. The coordinated execution became chaos as clones collapsed or fought against invisible commands. On Felucia, Aayla Secura spun as Commander Bly's voice cracked over the comm. "All troops, stand down! I repeat, stand down! Medical emergency! Something's wrong with our..." Static, then silence. The Twi'lek Jedi Master reached out through the Force and felt hundreds of clone troopers across the jungle moon, writhing in mental agony, biological commands misfiring like corrupted code. On Kaito Neimoidia, Plo Koon's starfighter shuddered as his clone pilot screamed over the comm channel, their voices distorted with pain and confusion. But they didn't fire. The coordinated strike that should have obliterated him in an instant never came. In the Jedi Temple on Coruscant, Mace Windu stood in the council chamber, his hand pressed against the window overlooking the endless cityscape. The Force screamed a warning, betrayal, death, darkness, but the killing blow never landed. His comlink crackled with urgent transmissions from across the galaxy, Jedi voices alive when they should have been silenced. "Master Windu," came Obi-Wan's voice, urgent and breathless. "The clones just tried to kill me. Commander Cody said something took control of him, but it failed. I need to know." "It's happening everywhere," Windu interrupted, his voice grave. "I'm receiving reports from 17 sectors. Coordinated assassination attempts. All failed!" Anakin Skywalker burst into the council chamber, his face pale, eyes wild with realization and horror. "I know who's behind this," he said. "I know who the Sith Lord is." The Force itself seemed to hold its breath. In the Chancellor's office high above Coruscant's Senate District, Palpatine stood before the massive windows, hands clasped behind his back. His reflection in the transparisteel showed none of the calm he projected. Inside, Darth Sidious raged. The carefully constructed plan, decades in the making, had just collapsed. The inhibitor chips, Tyrannus's contingency, refined and embedded in every clone trooper, had failed to activate properly. Some genetic flaw, some unforeseen mutation in the Kaminoan cloning process, or perhaps sabotage? It didn't matter now. What mattered was that thousands of Jedi still lived. The Order still stood, and worse, the clones would talk. They would reveal the chips, The Jedi would investigate. His secret was minutes away from exposure. Palpatine turned from the window, yellow eyes flashing briefly before returning to their grandfatherly warmth. He activated his comlink. "Commander Fox, this is the Chancellor. We have a situation. I need the Coruscant Guard at the Jedi Temple immediately. Tell them we've discovered evidence of a Jedi plot against the Republic." If the grand design had failed, then improvisation would have to suffice. The Sith had survived for 1,000 years through adaptability. This would be no different. On Mustafar, the Separatist Council huddled in the conference room, watching the HoloNet reports with growing alarm. The war was supposedly over. But now, reports of clone malfunctions and Jedi survival flooded every channel. Newt Gunray's mechanical voice trembled. "Lord Sidious promised us protection. Where is Darth Vader? Where is our guarantee of safety?" No answer came from Coruscant. The galaxy stood on a precipice. The Jedi had survived, but survival was only the first challenge. Now they had to prove the conspiracy, expose the Sith Lord, and salvage a republic that had been corrupted from within for longer than most of them realized. The real battle was only just beginning. If you want to see more alternate timeline stories where the fate of the galaxy hangs by a thread, hit that subscribe button and drop your own what-if ideas in the comments below. May the Force be with you. Within minutes of the failed assassination attempt, the Jedi Temple's communication arrays blazed with activity. Masters, Knights, and Padawans from across the galaxy reached out through both technology and the Force itself, confirming what should have been impossible. They were alive. In the Temple's central communications hub, a young Padawan named Zet Jukasa worked frantically to coordinate incoming transmissions. Holographic figures materialized across the chamber. Shak Ti from Kamino, Luminara Unduli from Kashyyyk after rushing to Yoda's position, Quinlan Vos from Boz Pitti, and dozens more. Each told the same story. Clones had turned on them without warning, without reason, then stopped mid-attack as if released from some terrible compulsion. "The pattern is undeniable," Shak Ti's hologram reported, her usually serene voice tight with tension. "On Kamino, I've begun preliminary examinations of the clone troopers. There's something in their heads, an organic chip embedded in their brain tissue. The Kaminoans claim it's a behavioral modification matrix, but Master Shabu is detecting dark side energy residue." Mace Windu absorbed the reports with growing dread. "How many chips failed?" "Approximately 93% across all battalions," Shak Ti replied. "The remaining 7% successfully executed the command, but their targets escaped through the Force or combat prowess. Whatever triggered the chips caused catastrophic malfunction in most units." Obi-Wan's hologram flickered into focus beside the others. Commander Cody stood behind him, helmet removed, face gaunt. "Masters, Commander Cody wishes to speak." The clone commander stepped forward, and every Jedi in the chamber could sense his anguish through the Force. "Generals, we didn't want this. We didn't choose this. One moment I was standing with General Kenobi, the next, there was a voice in my head. Execute Order 66. It wasn't my voice. It wasn't my thought. It was like someone else was pulling my trigger finger." His voice cracked. I felt myself aiming at the general's back. I wanted to stop, but I couldn't. Then suddenly the command broke apart, like static clearing. I was myself again. Silence filled the chamber. Anakin stood beside Mace Windu, his mechanical hand clenched into a fist. He'd spent 3 years fighting alongside these men, leading them, trusting them with his life and the lives of his Padawan. The revelation that they'd been enslaved from creation sent rage burning through his veins, but beneath the rage was something colder. Recognition. "The Chancellor," Anakin said quietly. "This has Palpatine's signature all over it." Every eye in the chamber turned to him. "Explain yourself, Skywalker," Windu commanded. Anakin took a breath, gathering the words he'd been preparing since his revelation moments ago. "Earlier today, I discovered that Chancellor Palpatine is the Sith Lord we've been searching for, Darth Sidious. He revealed himself to me, tried to turn me to the dark side by promising he could save Padme from a death I've foreseen in visions. He met Windu's gaze steadily. I came to report him to the Council before all of this happened. I chose the Jedi Order over his manipulation. Yoda's ears drooped as the ancient master absorbed this confirmation of his deepest fears. Long suspected this I have. Clouded, the dark side has kept the truth. But clear now, it becomes. If Palpatine is Sidious, Obi-Wan's hologram said, then he orchestrated the entire war. The Separatists, the clone army, everything. He's been playing both sides to accumulate power. And these chips, Kit Fisto added, his tentacles twitching with agitation, are his contingency, his weapon to eliminate us whenever he chose. Then why did they fail? Asked Aayla Secura, her hologram materializing beside Obi-Wan's. If Sidious spent years embedding these things in the clones, he wouldn't leave their activation to chance. Shaak Ti's expression darkened. I may have the answer. During my examination of the chips, I discovered degradation in the organic circuitry. The Kaminoans used accelerated aging techniques on the clones, 10 years of life compressed into 1 year of growth. It seems the chips degraded at different rates depending on each clone's unique biology. Most deteriorated enough to malfunction. Pure chance saved us. Not chance, Yoda said softly. The will of the Force. Mace Windu stepped forward, his presence commanding immediate attention. The Jedi Order stands at a crossroads. Palpatine holds emergency powers granted by the Senate. He controls the clones, or at least believes he does. He has the loyalty of most senators, and the population sees him as the hero who will end the war. If we accuse him without irrefutable proof, he'll paint us as traitors attempting a coup. Then we gather proof, Anakin said firmly. We expose him before he can spin this disaster into his advantage. But even as he spoke, every Jedi felt a tremor in the Force, a disturbance of darkness and desperation converging on the temple itself. Commander Fox's voice crackled over the temple's external security comm. Jedi Temple, this is the Coruscant Guard. By order of Supreme Chancellor Palpatine, we are authorized to enter and investigate reports of treason. Open the doors, or we will breach. The Jedi exchanged grim looks. Palpatine wasn't waiting. He was already moving to control the narrative. So it begins, Mace Windu said, igniting his lightsaber. The purple blade cast stark shadows across his face. Not with our extinction, but with our choice. Surrender to tyranny or stand and fight for the republic we swore to protect. The temple's massive doors remained sealed as the Coruscant Guard assembled outside, their red-marked armor gleaming under the setting sun. Inside, Mace Windu stood in the central command center, surrounded by holographic projections of Jedi scattered across the galaxy and those present in the temple itself. Every second counted now. We need to separate truth from tactics, Windu said, his voice cutting through the tension. Fox and his men are following orders they believe are legitimate. They're not our enemies. Palpatine is. Anakin stepped forward, his presence charged with barely contained energy. Then we go directly to the source. Master Windu, let me accompany you to confront Palpatine. He revealed himself to me. I can testify to the Senate, and my presence will prove I rejected his offer. Windu studied the young knight carefully. Weeks ago, he would have refused immediately. Skywalker was too volatile, too emotional, too clouded by attachment. But the man standing before him now had made a choice, perhaps the most difficult choice of his life, and the Force itself seemed clearer around him for it. You'll come, Windu agreed. But Kit Fisto and Egen Kolar will join us as well. If Sidious is as powerful as the ancient texts suggest, we'll need every advantage. Obi-Wan's hologram flickered urgently. Master Windu, while you confront Palpatine, I'll bring Commander Cody and a full medical brief on the inhibitor chips to the Senate. We need senators to see the physical evidence of this conspiracy. I recommend Master Shaak Ti transmit all data from Kamino immediately. Agreed, Windu said. Yoda, can you reach the temple? The ancient Jedi Master's hologram nodded gravely. On my way, I am. But hours away, Kashyyyk is. Trust in you, I do. Confront Sidious, you must, before his lies take root. Outside the temple, Commander Fox received new orders through his helmet comm. Palpatine's voice was smooth, concerned, paternal. Commander, the Jedi are refusing to cooperate with a legitimate investigation. I fear they may be preparing to launch their coup. You are authorized to use necessary force to secure the temple. Fox hesitated. Something about this felt wrong. His brothers across the galaxy had reported the same strange compulsion, the same burning command that had nearly made them kill the Jedi they'd fought beside for years. And now the Chancellor wanted him to lay siege to the temple? Sir, Fox said carefully, perhaps we should wait for the Senate to convene. If there's evidence of treason, it should be presented through proper channels. A pause. Then Palpatine's voice returned, colder. Are you questioning my authority, Commander? Before Fox could answer, the temple's main doors opened. But instead of an armed confrontation, a single Jedi emerged. Jocasta Nu, the elderly temple librarian, unarmed and serene. She walked toward the assembled Coruscant guard with her hands visible and empty. Gentlemen, she said, her voice carrying across the plaza, there has been a terrible misunderstanding. The Jedi Order wishes to cooperate fully with any legitimate investigation. However, we have discovered evidence of a conspiracy that reaches the highest levels of government. We formally request that the Senate convene an emergency session to examine this evidence. Fox's tension eased slightly. This wasn't the behavior of conspirators preparing a coup. Ma'am, I have orders from the Chancellor. The Chancellor, Jocasta Nu interrupted gently, is the subject of our evidence. We believe he orchestrated the attack on the Jedi that occurred 1 hour ago. Commander, have you experienced any unusual mental commands today? Any compulsions that didn't feel like your own thoughts? Fox's hand moved unconsciously to his helmet. Several of his men shifted uncomfortably. The Jedi knew about the chips. Inside the temple, Anakin, Mace Windu, Kit Fisto, and Aegon Kolar moved swiftly toward the speeder hangar. Jocasta Nu is buying us time, Windu said. We need to use it. Skywalker, once we reach the Chancellor's office, let me take the lead. Your testimony will be crucial, but if Sidious attacks, stay back until— With respect, Master, Anakin interrupted. I've seen what he's capable of. He killed 3 council members the last time this confrontation happened in my vision. We need to hit him hard and fast, together. Windu's jaw tightened, but he nodded. The speeder bay doors opened, and the 4 Jedi climbed into a Republic gunship. As they lifted off into Coruscant's endless traffic lanes, Anakin felt Padme's presence through their bond. She was in the Senate building, safe for now, but confused and frightened by the sudden chaos erupting across the city. Stay safe, he projected through the Force. I'm ending this. The Senate district rose before them, its massive dome gleaming in the fading light. Somewhere inside that building, Darth Sidious waited. Did he know they were coming? Was he preparing his own contingencies? Or had the failure of Order 66 thrown him into reactive desperation? The gunship landed on the Chancellor's private platform. The 4 Jedi disembarked, lightsabers unignited but hands resting on their hilts. The corridor leading to Palpatine's office was eerily quiet. No guards, no aides, no security droids. He's cleared the area, Kit Fisto observed, his black eyes scanning for threats. He knows we're coming. They reached the outer office. The door stood open, an invitation or a trap. Beyond it, they could sense the dark side coiling like a serpent preparing to strike. Mace Windu stepped forward, the other 3 Jedi flanking him. They entered together. Palpatine stood before his desk, hands folded, expression carefully crafted into concern and confusion. Master Windu, Anakin, what is the meaning of this? I've received disturbing reports that the Jedi are refusing to cooperate with... The charade is over, Sidious, Windu said, his voice like Durasteel. We know what you are. We know what you've done. For a heartbeat, Palpatine maintained his mask. Then, slowly, he smiled. It was not the smile of a kindly chancellor. It was the smile of a predator who'd been caged too long and finally saw an opportunity to remind the galaxy what true power looked like. Do you? Palpatine asked softly. Do you really? The air in the Chancellor's office grew heavy with the dark side, a palpable pressure that made breathing difficult. Palpatine's grandfatherly facade melted away like wax before flame, revealing the ancient malice beneath. His eyes shifted from kind blue to sulphurous yellow, and the shadows in the room seemed to deepen and writhe with unnatural life. The Jedi, Palpatine said, his voice dropping into a sibilant hiss, are so arrogant, so certain of their righteousness. For 1,000 years you've claimed to serve the Force, yet you've allowed the Sith to operate beneath your very noses. We rebuilt our order in the shadows you created with your complacency. Your order dies with you, Mace Windu said, his hand closing around his lightsaber hilt. In the name of the Galactic Senate, you are under arrest, Chancellor. Palpatine's laugh was cold and terrible. I am the Senate! The Sith Lord's hands shot forward, and lightning erupted from his fingertips. Not the measured demonstration he'd shown Anakin, but raw, unfettered dark side energy that filled the room with crackling blue-white death. The 4 Jedi ignited their lightsabers in perfect synchronization, blades snapping to intercept the attack. Anakin's blue blade caught the lightning meant for him, the energy screaming as it was redirected into the walls. Beside him, Kit Fisto's green blade wove a defensive pattern, while Aegon Kolar and Mace Windu pressed forward, their lightsabers cutting through Palpatine's assault to close the distance. But Sidious had fought Jedi before, masters whose names had been lost to history, warriors who'd pushed him to the edge of death. His body moved with impossible speed as he drew a crimson lightsaber from his sleeve, the blade igniting with a snap hiss that promised violence. The first exchange lasted 3 seconds. Aegon Kolar lunged, his green blade aimed for Sidious's chest. The Sith Lord's crimson saber moved in a blur, deflecting the strike and continuing through to open Kolar's throat. The Jedi Master collapsed, dead before he hit the ground. Kit Fisto roared, his blade coming down in a powerful overhead strike that Sidious caught and redirected, using the Nautilin's momentum against him. A burst of Force lightning at point-blank range sent Fisto crashing through the Chancellor's desk, his body convulsing. 2 down! Sidious hissed, his blade dancing between Windu and Anakin. Just like last time, eh, young Skywalker? Except this time, you're on the wrong side. No, Anakin said, his voice steady despite the adrenaline flooding his system. This time I'm exactly where I need to be. He attacked with Gemso's aggressive power strikes, each blow designed to batter through Sidious's defense. But the Sith Lord was a master of all 7 forms, shifting fluidly between styles, never where Anakin expected him to be. Worse, Sidious was using the dark side to cloud Anakin's precognition, making each exchange unpredictable and deadly. Mace Windu's Vapad style fed on the dark side energy Sidious radiated, turning the Sith's own power against him. His purple blade became a whirlwind of controlled aggression, forcing Sidious to divide his attention between 2 opponents instead of overwhelming them individually. The battle spilled out onto the Chancellor's private balcony, high above Coruscant's endless cityscape. Speeders zipped past far below, oblivious to the clash of ideologies and power happening above them. Your plot has failed, Sidious, Windu said, pressing his attack. The Jedi survived. The clones know they've been enslaved. The Senate will learn the truth. Sidious's laughter echoed across the balcony. Will they? You think the Senate will believe the Jedi over their beloved Chancellor? You think a republic drowning in bureaucracy and corruption will accept that their savior is a Sith Lord? He unleashed another torrent of Force lightning that forced both Jedi to defend. I've spent decades building my power base. One setback won't destroy what I've created. Below in the Senate chamber, Obi-Wan Kenobi stood before the assembled senators with Commander Cody beside him. Holographic displays showed the biological scans of inhibitor chips, the testimony of clone troopers, and the pattern of coordinated attacks across the galaxy. Bail Organa and Mon Mothma stood with him, lending their political weight to the accusations. These chips, Obi-Wan explained, his voice carrying through the chamber's acoustics, were designed to turn the clone army into unwitting assassins. When activated, they overrode the clones' free will and forced them to execute their Jedi commanders. Only a malfunction saved us from extinction. Senator Ask Ok from Malastare rose, his voice skeptical. General Kenobi, these are serious allegations, but you're accusing the Chancellor, a man who has guided us through the war, of orchestrating a genocide. Where is your proof that Chancellor Palpatine is behind this? The proof, came Anakin's voice over the Senate's public comm system, is happening right now. Every holoscreen in the chamber flickered to life, showing the live feed from the Chancellor's office security cameras. Footage Anakin had activated with a subtle Force push before the confrontation began. The Senate watched in horror as their Chancellor, transformed into a yellow-eyed monster, wielded a red lightsaber against Jedi Masters, his face twisted with malice and dark power. I am the Senate! Palpatine's voice echoed through the chamber from the footage. The Sith will rule once more! Silence descended on the Senate chamber. Thousands of senators stared at the screens, watching their Chancellor, their hero, revealed as the very enemy they'd been fighting against for 13 years. Mon Mothma's voice cut through the stunned quiet. I move for an immediate vote of no confidence in Supreme Chancellor Palpatine and authorization for his arrest on charges of treason, war crimes, and conspiracy against the Republic. Seconded, Bail Organa said firmly. The vote was unanimous. Back on the balcony, Sidious felt the shift in the political landscape through the Force. His support, his carefully constructed web of influence, was collapsing in real time. The rage that erupted from him was volcanic. He abandoned all pretense of lightsaber combat and unleashed the full fury of the dark side. Force lightning arced from his hands in torrents, filling the air with ozone and screams. Mace Windu's Vapad defense turned the energy back on Sidious, creating a feedback loop of dark side power that illuminated the entire balcony like a thunderstorm. Anakin saw his moment. While Sidious was locked in the lightning duel with Windu, he reached out through the Force and pulled, not at Sidious, but at the balcony railing behind him. Durasteel groaned and snapped. Sidious stumbled, his concentration breaking for just an instant. Mace Windu's blade came down in a perfect arc, severing the Sith Lord's hand. The crimson lightsaber tumbled away into the Coruscant abyss. Darth Sidious, Emperor-in-waiting, architect of the Clone Wars, fell to his knees, his yellow eyes wide with disbelief and fury. The Senate has voted, Windu said, his blade at Sidious's throat. Your reign ends here. The Senate chamber erupted into chaos. Some senators cheered, others sat in stunned silence, and a few, those whose loyalty to Palpatine ran deeper than law or morality, stood and stormed toward the exits. The HoloNet feeds broadcasting across the galaxy showed every moment of the fallen Chancellor's defeat. His yellow eyes and crimson blade now seared into the consciousness of trillions. On the balcony, Mace Windu's purple blade remained steady at Sidious's throat. The Sith Lord knelt, cradling his severed hand, but his eyes burned with undiminished hatred. Anakin stood ready, his own blade ignited, watching for any hint of deception. It's over, Windu said. Your conspiracy dies with your arrest. Sidious's laugh was a wet, rasping sound. Over? Foolish Jedi. I've ruled the galaxy for 13 years through a proxy. I've turned the Republic into a machine of war, militarized every system, centralized power in the executive. Do you think my arrest changes the infrastructure I've built? The Senate will dismantle it, Anakin said, though uncertainty crept into his voice. Will they? Sidious smiled through his pain. The war still rages. The Separatists are still armed and operational. Without me to command them to stand down, they'll keep fighting, and the Republic will need emergency powers to survive. The systems that grew dependent on military rule won't surrender that power easily. I've made tyranny comfortable. He looked up at Windu. Kill me, and you make me a martyr. Imprison me, and my followers will work to free me. Either way, the Republic you're trying to save is already dead. I just helped it recognize the fact. Windu's jaw tightened. Senate Security, this is Master Windu. We need a containment team on the Chancellor's balcony immediately. Force suppressing restraints. Within minutes, red-robed Senate guards arrived with specialized binders designed to inhibit force sensitivity. Rare technology, ancient and expensive, but necessary for containing a Sith Lord. They clasped them around Sidious's wrists, and the Sith Lord's connection to the dark side dampened to a flickering ember. As they led him away, Sidious locked eyes with Anakin. You chose poorly, Skywalker. Your wife will still die. The vision you saw was true. I simply offered you a path to prevent it. Without my knowledge, she's doomed. Anakin's blade wavered, but he held firm. The Force will guide me to another way. The Force, Sidious spat, is a lie you tell yourselves to justify your control over the galaxy. They took him away, down into the depths of the Senate building, toward a cell that would hold him until trial. Mace Windu deactivated his lightsaber and turned to Anakin. You did well. Your choice today saved the Order. Did it? Anakin stared out over Coruscant's endless sprawl. Sidious is right about one thing. The war isn't over. Someone still commands the Separatist forces, and without Dooku or Grievous, that someone is probably automated systems or scattered commanders who'll keep fighting out of momentum or fear. Below, in the Senate chamber, Obi-Wan Kenobi stood beside Commander Cody, watching as senators debated their next move. Bail Organa had taken temporary leadership, calling for order. But the voices rising from every platform revealed the depth of the crisis. Some demanded the Jedi take control until stability returned. Others wanted the Senate to elect an emergency chancellor. A few insisted the clone army be deactivated immediately, while their opponents argued that would leave the Republic defenseless. We've exchanged one crisis for another, Obi-Wan said quietly to Cody. The clone commander nodded, his expression grim. General, permission to speak freely? Always. The clones need to know what happens to us now. We were created to fight this war, but if we're enslaved by these chips, are we even people? Or are we just weapons that malfunctioned? Cody's voice carried the weight of an existential question that thousands of his brothers across the galaxy were asking simultaneously. Before Obi-Wan could answer, Shakti's hologram materialized beside them. Masters, I have critical information from Kamino. The inhibitor chips can be safely removed, but the procedure is delicate and requires specialized equipment. More importantly, I've discovered something in the Kaminoan records, a conversation between the Prime Minister and Count Dooku regarding the chip's true purpose. She transmitted the file. The holographic recording showed Lama Su speaking with a hooded figure whose voice was unmistakably Dooku's. The chips will ensure absolute loyalty. When the time comes, the Jedi will be eliminated without hesitation. Not one will survive. The Senate chamber fell silent as the recording played across every screen. The clone army, the Republic's great salvation, had been designed from inception as an instrument of Jedi genocide. Senator Orn Free Ta from Ryloth rose, his multiple chins quivering with indignation. This is an abomination. The clones must be decommissioned immediately. We cannot trust an army designed to murder the Jedi. Roars of agreement erupted from several platforms. Commander Cody stepped forward, his voice amplified across the chamber. With respect, Senators, we didn't choose to have these chips implanted. We didn't choose to be slaves. Most of us fought against the programming and won. We're asking for the chance to prove we're more than our programming, that we're sentient beings deserving of rights and freedom. Bail Organa nodded slowly. Commander Cody speaks the truth. The clones are victims of Sidious's conspiracy, not perpetrators. I propose immediate funding for chip removal procedures across all battalions, and legislation granting clone troopers full citizenship rights upon completion of their service. The debate raged for hours. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, Jedi Masters faced their own impossible decisions. On ship after ship, in base after base, clone troopers looked to their Jedi generals with fear and hope mingled in equal measure. On Kashyyyk, Yoda stood among the Wookiees, Master Luminara beside him. "Trust them, we must," Yoda said. "Defined by their creation, the clones are not. Defined by their choices, they will be." But on Maigito, Ki-Adi-Mundi ordered his troops to surrender their weapons until the chips could be removed. The clones complied, but the Syrian Jedi Master could sense their humiliation and anger. Trust, once broken, was not easily restored. In the Jedi Temple, Jocasta Nu stood in the archives, pulling ancient texts on Sith history. If Sidious had followed the rule of two, there should be an apprentice somewhere, a Darth Vader waiting to emerge. But who? The war had produced many dark side adepts. Asajj Ventress, Savage Opress, the Inquisitors. Any could be Sidious's successor. A young archivist approached. "Master Nu, we've received reports from Mustafar. The Separatist Council is still there, unguarded. Should we send a team to apprehend them?" Jocasta Nu considered. "No, let them stew in fear for now. They're more useful as witnesses than as martyrs. They can testify to Sidious's manipulation of both sides." But even as she spoke, a transmission came through from Mustafar. Brief, garbled, terrified. "This is Newt Gunray. Someone's attacking the compound. They have a lightsaber. It's..." Static. Silence. Jocasta Nu's blood ran cold. Sidious was in custody, but his apprentice was still active, tying up loose ends. Somewhere in the galaxy, Darth Vader was completing the mission his master had begun. The question was, who wore that title now? The attack on Mustafar changed everything. When Jedi strike teams arrived at the volcanic planet 12 hours after the garbled transmission, they found the Separatist Council's compound transformed into a charnel house. Newt Gunray, Wat Tambor, Poe Nudo, and the others lay dead, their bodies bearing the unmistakable burns of lightsaber wounds. The killer had been methodical, efficient, and brutal. Obi-Wan Kenobi stood in the conference room where the massacre had occurred, his hand covering his nose and mouth against the acrid stench. Beside him, Anakin surveyed the scene with grim intensity, his mechanical hand clenching and unclenching. "Whoever did this wanted them silenced," Obi-Wan said. "These weren't battle deaths. This was execution." Anakin knelt beside Gunray's body, examining the cauterized wound across the Neimoidian's chest. "Single strike, precise angle. The killer knew exactly where to cut for immediate death. This is the work of someone trained in lightsaber combat, someone good." "Sidious's apprentice," Obi-Wan concluded. "But who? We've accounted for all known dark side users. Ventress is in hiding, Savage Opress was killed on Dathomir, and the Inquisitors Sidious was training are all low-level adepts, not capable of this level of precision." Back on Coruscant, the political situation deteriorated by the hour. The revelation of Palpatine's conspiracy had fractured the Senate into competing factions. The core worlds, having benefited most from the Republic's militarization, resisted any return to the old democratic processes. The Rim worlds, ground down by years of war and occupation, demanded immediate demilitarization and the restoration of local autonomy. In a hastily convened session, Senator Ornfree Ta proposed a motion that sent shockwaves through the chamber. Given the Jedi Order's failure to detect the Sith conspiracy, and given their compromised relationship with the clone army, I move that the Jedi relinquish their position as generals and return to their traditional role as peacekeepers only. Bail Organa objected immediately. The Jedi saved us from complete annihilation. Without their intervention, Sidious would have succeeded in his coup. And yet, Ta countered, they led armies designed to murder them for 13 years without noticing. What else have they missed? How can we trust their judgment? Mon Mothma stood, her voice calm but forceful. This is exactly what Sidious wanted, to turn us against each other, to make us doubt the institutions that hold our republic together. The Jedi are not our enemies. They're victims of the same conspiracy we all are. But the seeds of doubt had been planted. Across the HoloNet, pundits and commentators questioned everything. Had the Jedi become too militarized? Had their involvement in the war corrupted their connection to the Force? Were they really guardians of peace? Or had they become weapons of state power? In his cell deep beneath the Senate building, Palpatine smiled. Even in defeat, his poison worked its way through the Republic's veins. The Jedi Council convened in emergency session, with masters present both physically in the temple and via hologram from across the galaxy. Yoda had finally returned from Kashyyyk, his small frame seeming even more burdened than usual. Fractured, the Republic has become, Yoda said, his ancient eyes scanning the assembled masters. Trust in the Jedi. Many systems have lost. Prove ourselves, we must, but carefully. Too much power we cannot take. Too little, and chaos will reign. Mace Windu stood at the center of the council chamber. The immediate threat is Sidious's apprentice. Until we identify and stop them, the Sith threat remains active. We should focus our efforts on investigation, not politics. The politics will find us regardless, Ki Adi-Mundi argued. We cannot ignore the Senate's loss of confidence. Perhaps Senator Ta is right. Perhaps we should step back from military command. And leave the clone army to whose authority? Shak Tai challenged. The Senate is in disarray. The clones trust their Jedi generals. If we abandon them now, we create a power vacuum that will be filled by opportunists or worse. Anakin spoke up, his voice carrying an edge of frustration. We're debating structure while someone out there is murdering witnesses. Sidious told me his apprentice would know what to do if he fell. That means whoever killed the Separatist Council is following a contingency plan. What else is on that list? The question hung in the air like a blade. Obi-Wan's hologram flickered as he transmitted from his starship en route from Mustafar. I've analyzed the attack pattern. The killer moved through the compound with intimate knowledge of its layout and security systems. They knew where everyone would be, knew the guard rotations, knew the escape routes. This wasn't opportunistic. This was planned. Could it be one of the Inquisitors Sidious was training? Asked Luminara Unduli. Possibly, Obi-Wan replied. But there's something else. I found evidence at the scene. Boot prints in volcanic ash. Distinctive tread pattern. I'm running it through Republic military databases now. The answer came back within minutes, and when it did, the blood drained from Obi-Wan's face. The tread pattern matches standard-issue Jedi Temple Guard boots. Silence crashed over the council chamber like a physical force. Impossible, Mace Windu said. Every Temple Guard is accounted for. Are they? Anakin asked quietly. How many guards serve in the temple? Hundreds? Do we personally know all of them? They wear masks, take vows of anonymity. What if Sidious planted someone years ago, waiting for this moment? Yoda's ears drooped. Infiltrated. The temple may have been. Trust no one completely, we can. But paranoia, the path to the dark side, it also is. The realization settled over them like a shroud. The Sith conspiracy went deeper than they'd imagined. Sidious hadn't just infiltrated the Senate and the clone army. He'd penetrated the Jedi Temple itself. Shak Ti's voice cut through the tension. Masters, I'm receiving reports from Camino. Several clone battalions are refusing chip removal procedures. They claim the chips are their only defense against rogue Jedi, that removing them makes them vulnerable to Force manipulation. Sidious's propaganda is taking root, Mace Windu said bitterly. He's turning our own transparency against us. We revealed the chips to prove the conspiracy. And now some clones see them as protection rather than slavery. Commander Cody's voice came over the secure channel, strained and weary. Masters, it's worse than that. We've intercepted communications from several clone battalions. They're talking about forming their own command structure, independent of both the Senate and the Jedi. They don't trust anyone anymore. The Republic was fracturing not along political lines, but along lines of species, ideology, and trauma. The clones who'd fought and bled for years now questioned their purpose. The Jedi who'd led them faced accusations of incompetence or complicity. The Senate that had empowered Sidious now scrambled to reclaim legitimacy. And somewhere in the shadows, Darth Sidious's apprentice continued their work, eliminating threats and witnesses, preparing for whatever came next. Anakin looked around the council chamber at the holographic faces of Jedi Masters he'd known his entire life. "We're fighting the wrong battle," he said. "Sidious wanted us distracted by politics and paranoia. He wanted us questioning each other instead of acting. We need to find his apprentice, remove the threat, and then we can worry about the Senate's opinion of us." "Agreed," Mace Windu said. "Obi-Wan, continue your investigation on Mustafar. Anakin, you'll take a team to investigate the temple guards. Quietly. If there's a traitor among them, we can't let them know we're looking." As the council dispersed, Yoda remained in his chair, staring at the empty chamber. The Force whispered warnings he couldn't quite interpret. Danger approaching from an unexpected direction. A threat that wore a familiar face. Somewhere in the galaxy, the true test of the Jedi Order's survival was only just beginning. Anakin Skywalker moved through the temple's lower levels with the careful precision of a predator stalking prey. Beside him walked Ahsoka Tano, his former Padawan, who had returned to the temple when news of Order 66's failure spread across the galaxy. Her mantra twitched as she sensed the unease permeating the ancient structure. "It feels wrong here," Ahsoka said quietly. "Like something dark has been living in the walls for years." "Because it has," Anakin replied. He paused at an intersection, reaching out through the Force. The temple guards have always been anonymous, interchangeable. Perfect cover for an infiltrator. We need to check their quarters without alerting whoever we're looking for. They descended deeper, past training rooms and meditation chambers, toward the barracks where off-duty temple guards resided. The corridors here were sparse, utilitarian, none of the grand architecture of the upper levels. These were the spaces for those who'd surrendered their identities to serve. A masked guard approached from the opposite direction, yellow-bladed lightsaber pike resting against their shoulder. "Master Skywalker, Citizen Tano, this area is restricted to guard personnel only." Anakin stopped, studying the guard's posture, their voice, searching for any hint of deception. "We're conducting an investigation under Council authority. We need to inspect the guard quarters." "By whose specific order?" The guard's voice remained neutral, but Anakin felt a ripple in the Force, not aggression, but wariness. "Master Windu's." The guard considered, then nodded. "Follow me." They walked through corridors lined with identical doors, each leading to a small cell containing little more than a bed and a locker. The guards who'd taken these vows owned nothing, claimed no identity beyond their service. It would be the perfect place to hide. "How many guards serve the temple?" Ahsoka asked. 243, the guard answered. "We rotate shifts continuously. Most of us never remove our masks, even in private quarters." "Ever?" Anakin pressed. "Anonymity is our strength. When you serve as a guard, You become the collective. Individual identity is surrendered to something greater. They reached the central monitoring room where duty rosters and assignment logs were kept. Anakin began reviewing the records, searching for inconsistencies. Guards who'd been absent during critical moments, unusual duty assignments, gaps in the patrol schedules. Meanwhile, across the galaxy on Naboo, Padme Amidala sat in her apartment, her hands resting on her swollen belly. The twins growing inside her kicked and shifted, responding to her emotional turmoil. Anakin's vision had shown her death in childbirth, and Palpatine had promised a way to prevent it. Now Palpatine was imprisoned, his dark knowledge beyond reach. But was Anakin's vision inevitable? Or had his choice to reject the dark side changed that future? A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. Captain Typho entered, his expression grave. "Senator, we've received intelligence from Republic Security. There's been an attempt to break Palpatine out of his holding cell." Padme rose immediately. "Was it successful?" "No. The guards stopped the infiltrators, but 3 were killed in the attempt. The attackers wore unmarked armor, used military-grade weapons, and fought with coordinated precision. They escaped before they could be captured." "So Palpatine still has followers," Padme said. "People loyal enough to die for him." "It's worse than that, Senator. We've intercepted communications suggesting similar cells are operating across multiple core worlds. They're calling themselves the Imperial Faithful, believers in Palpatine's vision of order through strength." The poison continued to spread. Back in the Jedi Temple, Anakin found what he was looking for. One guard's duty log showed a pattern of absences that coincided with significant events. The guard had been off duty during several critical council meetings, had requested leave just before major battles, and most damningly, had been absent from the temple entirely during the night Palpatine had revealed himself to Anakin. "This one," Anakin said, pointing to the designation. "Guard 773. The guide beside them tensed. A barely perceptible shift, but enough. Anakin's hand moved to his lightsaber. "You're 773, aren't you?" The guard moved with explosive speed, their lightsaber pike igniting as they struck. Anakin's blue blade snapped up to intercept, the yellow and blue plasma screaming as they connected. Ahsoka's white blades ignited, positioning herself to cut off the guard's escape. "You won't take me!" the guard hissed, their voice distorted by the mask. "The grand plan continues even with Lord Sidious imprisoned. The Empire will rise." They fought through the narrow corridors, the guard's pike allowing them to keep both Jedi at distance. But Anakin had trained in lightsaber combat since childhood, had fought in hundreds of battles, had faced Dooku and Grievous, and survived. This guard was skilled, but not invincible. Ahsoka feinted left, drawing the guard's attention, and Anakin struck from the right. His blade carved through the pike's shaft, severing it. The guard stumbled, and Anakin used the Force to rip away their mask. The face beneath was human, middle-aged, unremarkable, except for the yellow tint in their eyes that marked corruption by the dark side. "Who are you?" Anakin demanded. The guard smiled, blood trickling from their mouth where they'd bitten their tongue. "No one. Everyone. We are Legion. The Sith Eternal will endure long after you've fallen." Before Anakin could stop them, the guard bit down on something embedded in their teeth. Poison. They collapsed, dead before hitting the floor. Ahsoka stared at the body in horror. "Sith Eternal? What is that?" "I don't know," Anakin said grimly. "But I think we just discovered that Sidious's conspiracy goes even deeper than we imagined." Across the galaxy, events continued to cascade. On Kamino, the first successful chip removal surgeries were performed, with clones weeping as they felt true autonomy for the first time in their lives. But other clones watched with suspicion, wondering if their brothers were now vulnerable to Jedi manipulation. In the Senate, Bail Organa and Mon Mothma worked frantically to hold together a coalition of reasonable voices against the rising tide of extremism. Some senators demanded the immediate execution of Palpatine. Others called for the Jedi to be placed under Senate oversight. A few, those who'd benefited most from Palpatine's consolidation of power, quietly began organizing resistance to any return to democratic norms. And on Vyun, a planet shrouded in acid rain and dark side energy, a figure in black armor knelt before a holocron containing Darth Sidious's recorded instructions. The blue holographic image of the Sith Lord spoke with calm certainty. "If you are viewing this, then I have fallen. Do not despair. The grand plan merely requires adjustment. The Republic is weakened, divided, traumatized. The Jedi are discredited. The clone army is fractured. All the pieces remain in play. You need only push them in the right direction." The figure rose, red lightsaber igniting in the darkness. "Continue the mission. Eliminate the Separatist leaders. Done. Destabilize the Republic. In progress. And finally, break the Jedi Order from within. Make them question themselves, their purpose, their right to exist. When they are weakened enough, strike. The Empire will rise not through a single coup, but through the slow collapse of everything that came before." The holocron deactivated. The figure turned toward a viewport showing Vyun's toxic landscape and spoke a single word into the darkness. "Yes, my master." Darth Vader, not Anakin Skywalker, but another who'd claimed that title, prepared to complete what Sidious had begun. The revelation of the Sith Eternal cult sent shockwaves through the Jedi Council. If Palpatine had established sleeper agents throughout the galaxy, not just in the Senate or military, but embedded within the temple itself, then the conspiracy was far more insidious than anyone had imagined. These weren't mere political operatives. They were true believers in the dark side, willing to die rather than betray their cause. Mace Windu convened an emergency council session in a secure chamber shielded from electronic surveillance. "We're fighting a Hydra," he said, his voice heavy with frustration. "Cut off one head, and two more appear. Sidious is in custody, but his followers continue his work. We need to identify all Sith Eternal members before they can do more damage." "Interrogate Sidious we should," Yoda suggested. "Know his agents." "He does. Information from him we may extract." "He'll never cooperate willingly," Ki Adimundi countered. "And we cannot use torture. That would make us no better than the Sith." Anakin leaned forward, his expression troubled. "There's another problem. When I confronted Palpatine before his arrest, he mentioned his apprentice would know what to do if he fell. We assumed he meant tying up loose ends like the Separatist Council. But what if there's a larger plan? What if his apprentice is coordinating these Sith Eternal cells?" Obi-Wan's hologram flickered. "I've been investigating the Mustafar massacre further. The killer took time to access the Separatist Council's computer systems before eliminating them. They downloaded communications, financial records, and tactical data. Whatever Sidious's apprentice is planning, they need that information." "For what purpose?" Shak Tai asked. "The Separatist armies," Anakin realized, his eyes widening. "Without their leadership, the droid forces are on automated protocols. But someone with access to their command codes could reprogram them, redirect them. Millions of battle droids still operational across the Outer Rim." The implications settled over the Council like a funeral shroud. If Sidious's apprentice controlled the Separatist army, they could reignite the war at any moment, or worse, turn those droids against specific targets. Meanwhile, in the Senate chamber, the political situation reached a breaking point. Senator Orn Free Ta stood before the assembly, his voice booming across the platforms. "For 3 months since Sidious's arrest, we have debated, delayed, and deliberated while the Republic burns. The Outer Rim is in chaos. Systems are seceding daily. The clone army is divided between those who've removed their chips and those who refuse. We need leadership, and we need it now." Bail Organa rose to respond. "Leadership, yes, but not dictatorship. We must not repeat Palpatine's consolidation of power. The Senate should elect a new chancellor through proper democratic process." "Democracy failed us!" Ta shouted. Democracy allowed Palpatine to seize power in the first place. We need a council of leaders, a triumvirate representing the core, colonies, and rim worlds. Shared power prevents another tyrant from rising. Mon Mothma stepped forward, her voice calm but forceful. Senator Ta, your proposal has merit, but it requires constitutional amendments that will take months to ratify. In the interim, I propose appointing an emergency administrative council to handle day-to-day governance while we rebuild our democratic institutions properly. The debate raged for hours, but beneath the political rhetoric, something darker stirred. Those senators loyal to Palpatine's vision worked quietly in the shadows, coordinating with the Sith Eternal cells, preparing for the moment when the Republic's paralysis would allow them to strike. On Coruscant's lower levels, Commander Fox met secretly with a group of clone officers from various battalions. The Coruscant Guard commander had been shaken by his near execution of Order 66, but unlike many of his brothers, he'd chosen to keep his inhibitor chip. Now he gathered others who'd made the same choice. "Brothers," Fox said, his helmet removed to show his scarred face. "We're being asked to mutilate ourselves based on Jedi accusations. They say the chips make us slaves, but I've done research. The chips also protect us from force manipulation. Remove them, and any Darksider can turn us into puppets." A clone captain from the 104th spoke up. "Fox, the chips tried to make us murder the Jedi. How can you defend them?" "Because the chips malfunctioned," Fox argued. "The programming was corrupted, but the base technology is sound. It's the only thing preventing Force users from controlling our minds completely. The Jedi want us defenseless." The seed of doubt took root. Some clones left the meeting, disgusted by Fox's paranoia. But others stayed, listening, wondering if perhaps the Jedi had their own agenda. This was exactly what the Sith Eternal wanted. Division, suspicion, the Republic eating itself from within. In the detention level beneath the Senate building, Darth Sidious sat in his cell, bound in force-suppressing restraints, cut off from the dark side that had sustained him for decades. Yet he smiled. Through the transparasteel barrier, he could see the guards, both Senate security and Jedi, watching him with vigilance. But vigilance wasn't enough. A young Jedi Knight named Zim Harth stood guard rotation, and Sidious had been observing him for weeks. The Knight was talented but troubled, haunted by the friends he'd lost during the war, angry at the Senate for its incompetence, frustrated with the Council's careful deliberation when action was needed. "Knight Harth," Sidious said softly, his voice carrying despite the barriers. "You seem troubled." "Silence, Sith," Harth replied, not looking at him. "I understand your pain. The war took so much from all of us. Your master died on Jabim, didn't he? Cut down by separatist droids while the Senate debated supply requisitions." Harth's hand tightened on his lightsaber hilt. "You orchestrated that war. You're responsible for his death." "Am I?" Sidious asked. "Or is the corrupt, bureaucratic Republic responsible? I merely exploited the weakness that was already there. Your master died because senators cared more about their corporate backers than soldiers in the field. You're trying to manipulate me." "No," Sidious said, his voice taking on a hypnotic quality even without force enhancement. "I'm simply stating facts. The Republic failed you. The Jedi Council failed you by binding themselves to a corrupt government. You know this. You feel it every day. The Council is working to reform." "Working," Sidious interrupted. "Always working, never acting. While they debate, the galaxy burns. You could do so much more if freed from their restraints. You could bring real order, real justice." Harth turned away, but Sidious could sense the conflict within him. The dark side whispered in places the force-suppressing restraints couldn't reach. In the Knight's own heart, in his own pain and anger. Seeds planted would eventually grow. Across the galaxy on Vyun, the figure in black armor stood before a holographic tactical display showing the Republic's current disposition. Clone battalions were marked in blue, separatist holdouts in red, and unknown variables in yellow. The entire galaxy was a chessboard, and pieces were still in play. A transmission came through from a Sith Eternal cell on Corellia. "My lord, the operation is prepared. We await your command to begin." The figure studied the display. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. The Republic was already fracturing along multiple fault lines. All it needed was the right push at the right moment, and the collapse would be unstoppable. "Begin Phase 2, the figure commanded. "Target the temple." On Coruscant, 3 blocks from the Jedi Temple, a cargo transport sat in a restricted parking zone. Inside, carefully concealed beneath legitimate supplies, sat enough thermal detonators to level a city block. The Sith Eternal operatives had been planting them for weeks, each delivery adding to the payload. They didn't need to breach the temple's defenses. They just needed to make it look like the Jedi's enemies were everywhere, that no place was safe, that the Order couldn't protect even their own home. The timer was set, 48 hours until detonation. The Force screamed a warning 30 seconds before the explosion. Anakin was crossing the temple's main plaza when the vision hit him, a brilliant flash of fire and destruction, the temple's lower levels collapsing, dozens of younglings crushed beneath falling stone. He didn't hesitate. His voice erupted across every comm channel. "Evacuate the temple! Bomb threat! Everyone out now!" Jedi Masters sprang into action with disciplined precision. Shaak Ti led the younglings toward emergency exits while Jocasta Nu transmitted priority alerts to evacuate the archives. Temple guards rushed to shepherd civilians and non-combatants away from the structure. Ahsoka coordinated the evacuation of the medical wing where injured clones were recovering from chip removal surgery. 20 seconds. Mace Windu reached out through the Force, searching for the source of the threat. There, 3 blocks away, a massive concentration of explosive energy. Too far to reach in time, but perhaps not too far to contain. He ran toward the Council Spire's highest balcony, gathering the Force around him. 10 seconds. Anakin sprinted toward the temple's main entrance, using the Force to pull stragglers out of the danger zone. A group of Padawans stumbled on the steps, and he lifted them bodily, throwing them clear with telekinetic force. 5 seconds. Yoda stood at the temple's heart, his small frame radiating immense power. He couldn't stop the explosion, but he could protect those still inside. The Force gathered around him like a shield, invisible walls of energy reinforcing the temple's ancient structure. 0. The cargo transport detonated with the force of a small suntai. The shockwave vaporized everything within 100 meters and sent a wall of fire and debris radiating outward. Buildings collapsed. Speeders were swatted from the sky. The explosion's roar was deafening, a physical assault on the senses. But the Jedi Temple, protected by Yoda's force barrier and evacuated by Anakin's warning, survived. The outer walls cracked and blackened. Several lower-level chambers collapsed, but the structure held. More importantly, the evacuation had been successful. Only 3 Jedi and a dozen civilians died from falling debris, when hundreds should have perished. As the smoke cleared, Mace Windu stood on the council balcony, his body trembling from the force exertion of redirecting blast energy away from concentrated population centers. He'd saved thousands in the surrounding district, but the cost showed in the gray pallor of his skin and the blood trickling from his nose. Anakin emerged from the smoke, supporting an injured Padawan. His expression was murderous. "This was the Sith Eternal. They're escalating." "Agreed," Windu said, his voice hoarse. "This was meant to kill us all, to decapitate the Order. When that failed, it becomes a propaganda victory, proof that the Jedi can't even protect their own temple." He was right. Within the hour, HoloNet feeds across the galaxy showed the burning temple, and commentators seized on the narrative. If the Jedi cannot defend themselves, how can they defend the Republic? Senator Ta's statement was broadcast repeatedly. "This attack proves we need new solutions, new leadership." The Sith Eternal had struck their blow, and even in failure, they'd achieved their goal, eroding public confidence in the Jedi. In his cell, Darth Sidious watched the footage with satisfaction. The attack hadn't killed the Jedi, but it had wounded something more important: their credibility. The Republic's faith in its guardians was crumbling. Soon people would beg for someone strong enough to restore order, and the Sith Eternal would provide that leader. But the Jedi weren't broken yet. In the temple's damaged council chamber, the Masters assembled with renewed determination. "No more defense," Mace Windu declared. "No more reaction. We hunt down every Sith Eternal cell, starting now. Anakin, take a strike team and investigate every lead we have. Obi-Wan, coordinate with Republic intelligence. I want surveillance on every known Palpatine loyalist. Shaak Ti, accelerate the chip removal program and secure the clones who've undergone the procedure." "And Sidious?" Ki-Adi-Mundi asked. "We interrogate him," Windu said. "Properly, not torture, but Force-assisted interview techniques. He knows who his apprentice is, where the Sith Eternal cells are hidden. We extract that information." Yoda raised a hand. "Dangerous, this path is. The dark side, it pulls at those who use it, even with good intentions." "Then it's a risk we have to take," Windu replied. "The alternative is watching the Republic burn while we maintain our moral purity. Sometimes, Master Yoda, the right choice isn't the easy one." The ancient Jedi Master said nothing, but his expression showed deep concern. The war had changed the Order, had forced them to become soldiers and politicians when they should have remained guardians and teachers. Every compromise, every necessity, pulled them further from their core principles. But what choice did they have? Anakin assembled his strike team within the hour. Ahsoka, Clone Captain Rex, chip removed, fiercely loyal, and 3 other Jedi Knights who'd proven themselves in combat. Their first target was a suspected Sith Eternal safe house in Coruscant's industrial district, identified through forensic analysis of the bombing materials. The raid was swift and brutal. The cultists fought with fanatical determination, choosing death over capture. But Anakin's team captured one alive, a former Republic officer named Tarek, who'd served in the Chancellor's Guard before disappearing 3 years ago. Under Jedi interrogation, Tarek revealed fragments of the conspiracy. "You've already lost," he said, blood dripping from his mouth. "The apprentice has activated all the contingencies. The Separatist army will march again. The clones will be turned against you. The Senate will beg for Imperial rule. Everything Lord Sidious planned continues." "Where is the apprentice?" Anakin demanded. Tarek smiled. "Closer than you think." Before Anakin could press further, Tarek's eyes rolled back and he convulsed. Another suicide protocol, another poison tooth. The cultist died with Sidious's name on his lips. But closer than you think, echoed in Anakin's mind. Not on some distant world, then. Here, on Coruscant. Someone in a position to observe the Jedi's movements, to coordinate attacks, to manipulate events. Someone with access. The realization struck like a lightsaber to the gut. He activated his comm to Mace Windu. "Master, I think the apprentice is in the Senate building. Someone close to Sidious's detention cell. Someone who can communicate with him despite the Force-suppressing restraints." "That's impossible," Windu replied. "The cell is monitored constantly by both Jedi and Senate security. No one gets near him without—" He stopped. They both realized it simultaneously. The guards themselves. On Vyun, the figure in black armor received a priority transmission. The temple bombing had failed to kill the Jedi, but it had achieved the necessary political objective. The next phase could proceed. "Activate the contingency," the figure commanded. "Free Lord Sidious." In the detention level, Knight Zim Hearth stood his watch, unaware that weeks of Sidious's subtle manipulation had finally borne fruit. The Sith Lord's voice whispered in his mind, not through the Force, but through simple psychological exploitation, through the dark places in Hearth's own heart. "The Republic failed your master. The Jedi Council failed you. But you can bring order. You can fix what they broke. All you have to do is take the first step. Hearth's hand moved to the cell controls. Night Hearth, don't! Ahsoka Tano sprinted down the corridor, her white lightsabers ignited. She'd been reviewing security footage and spotted the subtle signs. Hearth's body language during Sidious's imprisonment, the way he'd positioned himself during guard rotations, the micro-expressions that betrayed internal conflict. But she was 3 seconds too late. The Force-suppressing restraints deactivated. Darth Sidious surged to his feet, yellow eyes blazing, the dark side exploding around him like a tidal wave. Lightning erupted from his hands, incinerating the traitor Hearth instantly, before the young knight could even regret his choice. The Sith Lord was free. The alarms throughout the Senate building screamed like dying banthas. Ahsoka charged forward, her white blades crossing in a defensive pattern as Sidious's lightning crackled through the corridor. The dark side radiated from the Sith Lord like heat from a fusion reactor. 3 months of suppressed power now unleashed in a torrent of rage and malice. "Foolish child," Sidious hissed, his voice layered with dark side energy. "You cannot stop what has already been set in motion." Ahsoka didn't waste breath on words. She'd learned from Anakin to let her actions speak. She dove forward, blades spinning in the defensive forms Anakin had drilled into her for years. But Sidious was ancient, powerful, and now fully reconnected to the dark side that sustained him. He met her assault with bare hands wreathed in Force lightning, catching her lightsabers on streams of pure dark side energy. The corridor filled with the ozone stench of burning air and the screech of plasma meeting raw Force power. "You were Skywalker's student," Sidious said, almost conversationally, as he drove her back step by step. "He could have been my greatest apprentice. Instead, he chose sentiment over strength. A waste." Across the Senate building, Mace Windu felt the disturbance through the Force. Without hesitation, he sprinted toward the detention levels, gathering Jedi as he ran. Anakin was already moving, Rex and his strike team racing to support Ahsoka. But Sidious didn't need long. He blasted Ahsoka backward with a Force push that shattered the corridor wall behind her, then turned and ran, not toward escape, but toward the Senate chamber itself, where senators still debated the Republic's future. By the time Anakin reached Ahsoka, she was pulling herself from the rubble, bruised but alive. "He's heading for the Senate," she gasped. "Skywalker, he's going to—" "I know," Anakin said grimly. "He's going to make one final play for power." Darth Sidious burst into the Senate chamber like a storm given flesh. Senators screamed and scrambled for exits, but the Sith Lord used the Force to seal the doors. He strode to the Chancellor's podium, his podium, and raised his hands. "Citizens of the Republic," he declared, his voice amplified through the chamber's systems and broadcast across the hollow net to trillions watching. "For 3 months, you have watched your government collapse into paralysis. Systems secede daily. The Jedi have failed to protect even their own temple. The clone army fractures. Pirates and criminals run rampant in the Outer Rim. You cry out for leadership, for order, for security." Bail Organa stood from his platform, defiant. "You're a Sith Lord and a traitor! Guards, arrest him!" Senate guards rushed forward, but Sidious's lightning reduced them to charred corpses in seconds. The senators recoiled in horror, but the Sith Lord's yellow eyes blazed with terrible certainty. "I offered the Republic salvation once before, and you granted me emergency powers. I used those powers to nearly bring peace. The Jedi stopped me with their coup attempt, but the galaxy has seen the result. Chaos, weakness, decay. Now you have a choice." He gestured to the sealed doors. "The Jedi will breach these chambers in moments. You can side with their failed philosophy of endless debate and democratic stagnation, or you can embrace what the galaxy truly needs." The doors exploded inward. Mace Windu, Anakin, Ahsoka, Kit Fisto, and a dozen other Jedi stormed into the chamber, lightsabers blazing. Rex and his clones followed, blasters raised. But Sidious smiled. "Too late, Jedi. The people have already made their choice." And to the horror of every Jedi present, it was true. Among the senators, dozens stood. Those who'd prospered under Palpatine's rule, those who'd grown addicted to centralized power, those who feared the chaos of true democracy. Senator Orn Free Ta rose from his platform, his voice booming. "The Sith Lord speaks truth. 3 months of Jedi oversight has brought us nothing but weakness. I move that we grant emergency powers to a military council to restore order." "Seconded," another senator shouted. Mon Mothma's voice cut through the chaos. "This is insanity! You're choosing tyranny over freedom!" But fear was a powerful motivator, and Sidious had spent decades learning how to weaponize it. The vote began, senators choosing sides in real time as the galaxy watched. The tally appeared on holographic displays. 43% in favor of emergency military rule, 37% opposed, 20% abstaining or unreachable. Not enough for a supermajority, but enough to deadlock any alternative. Mace Windu stepped forward, his purple blade pointed at Sidious. "This ends now. Surrender, or we will end you." "Will you?" Sidious challenged. "Before the entire galaxy? Strike me down without trial, without due process, and prove that the Jedi are no better than the Sith? That you're simply another faction grasping for power?" It was the perfect trap. Kill Sidious, and the Jedi became tyrants who murdered political opponents. Let him live, and he'd continue corrupting the Republic from within. Anakin felt the weight of the moment. 3 months ago, he'd chosen the light over the dark, the Jedi over Sidious's promises. But that choice had only delayed the catastrophe, not prevented it. The Republic was still broken. The galaxy still teetered on the edge of collapse. And Padme, his secret wife, now 8 months pregnant, still faced the death he'd seen in his visions. "Master Windu," Anakin said quietly, "let me." "Skywalker." He revealed himself to me first. He tried to turn me, let me finish what I started. Anakin stepped forward. His blue blade held in a neutral guard. Sidious's smile widened. "Ah, young Skywalker, ready to embrace your destiny at last?" "My destiny," Anakin said, "is my own." He attacked with the full fury of his considerable power. Gemso's aggressive strikes backed by years of battlefield experience and raw force potential that dwarfed most Jedi Masters. But he didn't draw on anger or hatred. He drew on something else, his love for Padme, his loyalty to Obi-Wan and Ahsoka, his determination to protect the younglings in the temple, his refusal to let Sidious's corruption spread any further. The duel raged across the Senate chamber, blue blade clashing against crimson, light against dark. Sidious was older, more experienced, more cunning. But Anakin was the chosen one, and the Force flowed through him with unprecedented strength. Around them, the other Jedi formed a perimeter, protecting the senators, preventing interference. The galaxy watched through holocams as the future of the Republic was decided by lightsaber combat, a method as ancient as it was decisive. Anakin pressed his advantage, driving Sidious back toward the Chancellor's podium. The Sith Lord unleashed lightning, but Anakin's blade caught it, redirected it, turned Sidious's own power against him. For the first time, genuine concern flickered in the Sith Lord's yellow eyes. "You could still join me," Sidious gasped, his breath coming in ragged bursts. "Together, we could save your wife. The vision you saw, I can still prevent it." "No," Anakin said. "The Force will guide me to another way. A way that doesn't require becoming a monster." His blade came down in a final, decisive strike. Darth Sidious, Dark Lord of the Sith, architect of the Clone Wars, fell. The Senate chamber erupted into chaos. Some senators cheering, others screaming accusations of Jedi tyranny, most simply sitting in stunned silence. Anakin stood over the fallen Sith Lord's body, his blade still ignited, feeling both triumph and hollow exhaustion. Mace Windu stepped to his side. "You did well, Skywalker. You resisted his temptation and ended the threat." But Anakin stared at the body and felt only questions. "Did I?" Sidious said his plan would continue even if he fell. His apprentice is still out there. The Sith Eternal cells are still active. The Republic is still fractured. As if in answer, every holographic display in the Senate chamber flickered and changed. A new figure appeared, armored in black, face hidden behind a mask, red lightsaber ignited. "Lord Sidious is dead," the figure said, their voice distorted by the mask. "But the empire he envisioned will rise. I am Darth Vader, Dark Lord of the Sith, and I claim my master's legacy. The Separatist armies are under my command. The Sith Eternal cells await my orders, and the Republic is already dead. You simply haven't realized it yet." The transmission ended. In the terrible silence that followed, the Jedi and senators alike understood. They'd won a battle, but the war for the galaxy's soul had only just begun. The death of Darth Sidious did not bring peace to the galaxy. It brought a reckoning. In the months that followed, the Republic transformed into something unrecognizable to those who'd fought to preserve it. The Senate, deadlocked between reform and consolidation, established the Triumvirate Council, 3 leaders representing the core, colonies, and Rim, each with veto power over the others. It was democracy by committee, slow and frustrating, but it prevented any single individual from accumulating Palpatine's power. The Jedi Order survived, but forever changed. They withdrew from military command, returning to their traditional role as peacekeepers and mediators. The temple was rebuilt, its scars deliberately preserved as reminder of what nearly came to pass. Master Windu established new protocols. No Jedi would serve in political office. No Jedi would lead armies, and most importantly, the Order would train its members to recognize manipulation and political corruption. The clone army faced its own crisis of identity. 2/3 underwent chip removal and accepted Republic citizenship, many retiring to start new lives. But others, like Commander Fox and his followers, chose to keep their chips, forming the Imperial Guard, a military force that served the Triumvirate directly. The tension between chipped and chip-free clones became a defining fault line in post-war society. Anakin Skywalker never became Darth Vader, but his visions of Padmé's death haunted him until the day she safely delivered twins, Luke and Leia, with the help of Jedi healers who'd studied ancient techniques. His choice on that crucial day in Palpatine's office saved not just the Jedi, but his own soul. Yet the true Darth Vader, the mysterious apprentice who'd inherited Sidious's mantle, remained at large. The Separatist droid armies did not stand down. Instead, they retreated to the unknown regions, regrouping under new leadership. The Sith Eternal cells continued their campaign of terror and destabilization. The war everyone thought had ended simply changed shape. The galaxy learned a hard truth. Stopping a Sith Lord's plan was not the same as healing the damage it had caused. Corruption, fear, militarization, and division had taken root too deeply to be excised by a single lightsaber strike. The Republic survived Order 66's failure, but whether it could survive its own trauma remained an open question. Somewhere in the unknown regions, Darth Vader watched the core worlds struggle with their new reality and smiled beneath the mask. Sidious had taught well. The greatest empires were not built on conquest alone, but on the slow collapse of everything that came before. The Jedi had survived. The Sith Eternal would ensure they wished they hadn't.